Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to our extended disc 30-minute webinar. Today's topic, we're going to talk about a very common question we get asked all the time. It's how is extended disc different from disc? Just before we get started and before I allow my guest today to even say hello, I just want to make sure I let you guys know that 30 minutes, we've packed it. And so we definitely encourage your questions. However, please know that we won't be answering any questions live. Put your questions in the questions section, and I promise you we will follow up as soon as the webinar is over. So joining me today is my guest, Markku Kauppanen, President of Extended Disc North America. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Christina.
Hi. So we get asked this question all the time, right?
Every day we get asked this question, how is extended disc different from disc? So I think it's a topic we need to talk about in a webinar. And it's a common question, and I understand why, because there's a lot of confusion about disc in general. I think some people find it surprising that nobody actually owns disc. So I think it's going to be a good webinar.
Yeah, oftentimes I get that question, I've already taken discs. Do I have to take it again? And as you've taught me, my response is, oh, have you taken extended disc? So let's go ahead and get started. And let's first talk about the disc theory itself.
Yeah, the disc model has been around for a long time, and it really where it started is actually in 1921 based on Carl Jung's work when he developed the four-quadrant model that many people are so familiar with. All behavioral style assessment essentially are based on that foundation. And a few years later, in 1928, William Marston actually coined the term DISC. He named those four quadrants, D, I, S, and C. So the DISC model has been around for a long time. And like I said, people are sometimes surprised learning that nobody actually owns DISC. Essentially, it's a public domain or open source model. And that creates some confusion because people think there's a one DISC tool, when in reality there's a handful of companies that provide DISC theory-based assessments.
Yeah, and one thing I'm going to tell you about William Marston, you'll probably never forget, he is the father of the DISC model, but he is also the creator of Wonder Woman.
That's right. That's right.
So why do people choose DISC?
Well, and one thing I want to mention first also about the DISC and extended DISC is that over 95% of our clients use some form of DISC in the past. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason is that they typically like the DISC model. Mm-hmm. And when they switch to extended DISC, they really don't have to learn anything fundamentally new. D style is still a D style, and I style is an I style, and so on. So it's a very easy transition to extended DISC. And our clients tell that, and really when people talk about DISC, it is very popular. It's very, many clients use that, have used it for a long time. And I think the main reason that it's so popular is that it's simple to learn. Mm-hmm. There's four different behavioral styles, D, I, S, and C. The participants learn that very quickly. And because it's easy to understand, it's really easy to begin to put into practice. It's easy for people to begin not only think about who they are, it's always very fun to learn about the most important person in the world. So it's fun to read that report.
Me.
That's right. But then they begin to think about, hey, how about my coworkers? How about my customers? How about my friends and family? What DISC style they are? And this creates kind of a common language in organizations. Maybe a sales manager asked the salesperson that, hey, what style is that prospect you called on today? Mm-hmm. And well, I think he was an S style. Okay, now we know what motivates that person and how we best communicate and go forward with the sales process. So it becomes a very helpful tool, and it becomes something that is used every day.
Yeah. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the strengths of DISC, but we've also heard some criticism of DISC. So I want Markku to address those as well.
And I think a lot of this criticism has been very valid because traditionally, these tools really, they lack what I call the retest validity, retest validity, meaning that when people take DISC tools, and I'm not talking about extended DISC here, I'm talking about DISC tools in general, often the result would change. And the reason for that is that these tools were traditionally focused on measuring what the person perceives they need to be in their present environment. Mm-hmm. So when the environment changes or the person's perceptions of the environment changes, the results would change because they essentially are answering the questionnaire what they think they need to be in order to be successful. So people would, our clients tell us all the time that when our participants take this tool, people say things like, hey, I used to be an, let's say, an IS style and now I'm a DI style. Who is this person really? It creates some confusion and makes the tool, again, lack that test retest validity that a lot of people find a little troublesome.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of our clients that come to us that talk about, the different showing up as different styles on multiple assessments, we get a lot of people that have used other DISC assessment tools and they're looking for something different.
Yeah, and the main reason for that is that because if we have a tool that measures what the person thinks they need to be, and when they, again, those results change, the starting point for development is skewed. We don't really know who the person actually is. And in those situations, when people really started to worry about that, they started to look at other tools like maybe Myers-Briggs or MBTI. That is a very great tool because it measures that hardwired personality type. There's 16 personality types in MBTI, and when people retake the questionnaire, typically the results remain the same. You get that same four-letter combination because MBTI was designed to measure the hardwired personality type. And what it essentially becomes, it becomes a very great tool for self-discovery. I think it's always valuable to learn more about who we are because we tend to have blind spots and sometimes we are frankly a little bit delusional about who we are. We tend to sometimes overestimate our strengths and maybe overlook some of our development areas. And any tool that tells us more about who we are, I think it's a valuable exercise. Mm-hmm. But what I hear from my clients who use MBTI almost all the time is that a lot of times their training participants, they forget their own four-letter combination. 3 months after the training, if you ask the person, what's your type? They may remember 2 or 3 letters. Some may remember all 4 letters, but typically people forget. And that basically tells us that they're not actually using it. They probably learn a few valuable things about who they are, but they are not using it every day to modify their behavior. Because I believe when we use tools like any tool really, that we always have to look at the big picture. Why are we doing this? Yes, it's fun to learn more about who we are. That's always fun exercise to do. But really what we're trying to do is not only creating that confident self-image, but I think it's important that the participants learn to identify the styles of other people and most importantly, make very conscious decisions about how to modify their behavior. I think that's always should be the focus on using assessments. And with the MBTI, if they try to identify the personality types of the other people, like coworkers, customers, etc., you have to be very, very good at the model to be able to do that. And most people really can't get to that point. So yes, it's great for that self-discovery, but it's a little bit too complicated to get to the point where people are using that information to modify their behavior.
Yeah, and an example that I remember just being on I flew out to Fort Wayne, Indiana for a training, and in 5 minutes I had taught my Uber driver about DIS and C, and he was already applying it to the people he knew in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can learn it very quickly, and that's I think, the strength. But again, the challenge has been that we are not actually measuring who the person really is.
Right. So we've talked about DISC, but let's specifically talk, Markku, about extended DISC.
Yeah, one of the things when people ask how is extended DISC different, this is the number one thing that really comes up is that we, in essence, take the best of both worlds from the Myers-Briggs and the traditional DISC, meaning that we still keep that user friendliness. Like you said, people learn very quickly, and therefore they begin to practice very quickly. But instead of measuring who the person thinks they need to be, we actually measure that hardwired DISC style, who the person actually is. So it really gives us an accurate starting point for the development. Because when people retake extended DISC for different reasons over time, the results remain very stable. So we actually identify who the person is, not who they think they need to be.
And Markku, I remember you telling me that, you can, when you actually know your hardwired style, you can see it as a roadmap or a starting point, right?
Yeah, I think when we think about, again, the behavioral modification, that's the end goal we're trying to do. If we want to make adjustments to who we are, we need to know very clearly who we actually are and not who we think we need to be. There can often be a difference there.
Exactly. So let's talk about extended disc versus like traditional disc tools.
Yeah, in terms of what it measures, I think this is the best way to look at it. If we take this kind of axis from unconscious behavior to conscious behavior, and let me kind of explain a little bit more what I mean with that. With conscious behavior, I'm really talking about how we believe we need to behave, act at work in order to be successful. Most of us are a little bit different at home and at work. And when we go to work, we basically look at our environment, and we, through the filters of our style, we begin to identify what kind of behavior is going to create success. Things like my boss's behavioral style and their preferences and their little nuances will impact how I behave at work. The team culture or the culture of the department will have an impact. We'll think about how we need to behave in that environment. And often the entire organization or the corporate culture has a huge impact. And that is what basically adjusted behavior. It takes energy. So a lot of times if we have to modify behavior significantly throughout the day, by 5 o'clock, we are going to be pretty tired. So like I think all of us can think of a friend or a coworker who's very extroverted I style, for example. If their environment where they can be at that I style, they can socialize, they can talk and interact with a lot of people, that doesn't take that much work. However, if you put that same person in an environment where they have to work alone a lot, there's little interaction, hey, by lunchtime, they're already pretty tired because it takes a lot of energy. Now, our unconscious behavior is who we actually are. It takes then for less energy because we can be essentially who we are. We don't have to adjust it. We can just let it flow. So it's a very comfortable place to be. By the way, this is also the kind of style that we all tend to exhibit when we're under pressure. Under pressure, we revert to our natural style. So if you look at this scale, traditionally, DISC has focused on the conscious behavior, how we think we need to be right now in this given environment. Where extended DISC focuses is this hardwired unconscious behavior, who the person actually is. So we can identify what are their true strengths, what are their true development areas, and also can bring into light some of the blind spots. Now, Christina, we do look at the adjusted style a little bit because people do want to know that, but our focus is on that natural behavioral style.
Yeah, and I think this slide, I use it in my trainings. I think it helps to very clearly define the differences between extended DISC and other DISC tools. So,
and I just want to say that I think it's really important that clients understand whatever tool they use, that what it actually measures.
Good point.
If you don't know what it measures, and that may have an impact on how you actually should be using the tool. It's very important people understand that.
Yeah, and I tell people, just because your DISC tool tells you they're measuring your DISC style, do you know, is it truly measuring your natural style or that conscious behavior style that you just talked about?
That's correct.
So that's a great lead-in, but let's talk about other strengths of extended DISC. Let's talk about tailored assessments.
One of the things that our clients mention to me all the time is that they like that extended DISC, that we are able to tailor assessments to their unique preferences. Now, assessment companies in general typically provide a handful of assessment tools and assessment reports, if you will. For example, here's a report for a salesperson, here's a report for a manager, and so on. And you are just kind of forced to select those. With extended DISC, what we can do is we can really tailor the reports there's unlimited ways. We can obviously change the colors, the visuals, etc. But more important, we can adjust them to any type of roles, be it salesperson, leaders, managers, and even get out of the work settings. We can assess students, and we tailor the reports to provide information, in this case, that would be relevant and important to students. Obviously, would be different than somebody who's working for an organization. Also, what we can do is have people kind of what I call reinforcement reports. Let's say we have a person who gets their leadership assessment, but now that we have their information, we have their DISC style, we can go into our admin system and reorder the reports in different ways. So, for example, if we want to do a follow-up session on, let's say, stress and time management, you can get that report without having to ask that person to complete it again. Now, one thing that I think is very important to our clients is that we're able to tailor the reports for specific job roles, as we've seen here, but also to specific industries. So, for example, let's say that somebody's in customer service, and certainly there are in the report we will have information that is specific to customer service roles. But sometimes what will happen is, for example, if a person is a teller at a bank, well, when they get the customer service report, sometimes they may feel that, hey, I'm in customer service, but teller role is a little bit different than general customer service. However, when we tailor the report to their role, in this case, the teller role, when they get this report, they are much more open to their information. When they know it's a teller report and we change some of the images and then text that are relevant to the banking industry, for example, it takes away what I call the excuse factor. If I get a customer service report, I may create some excuses because, hey, banking is a little bit different from the other customer service. When I get a teller report, that's taken away.
It's talking to me.
It's talking to me. And people are much more open to it because, hey, this is for me. This is what role I am in. And I see the same thing in different industries. Like if we work with, let's say, oil and gas industry, where the images are clearly from that industry. You know, they say people in hard hats, for example, they're completely more open to the information in the report. And again, that makes the end goal, trying to modify behavior, easier to achieve.
Yeah, and what I always tell people is don't be overwhelmed by, this is just a very short sample of our ever dynamic growing list of reports. But we always say, you can always go back to the standard individual assessment. It applies to everyone.
Right.
But if you do need customization, if you do need something specific, we have that as well. And what's great about it is you don't have to have your clients and your employees take additional questionnaires, right?
That certainly saves a lot of time. But this is what I hear more often, Christina, is that they really like is that they only pay once. So, for example, if a leader gets the leadership report, and later on you want to provide them stress and time management report, you don't pay any additional for those new reports. You only pay one time per person.
And your employees only have to take it one time, which is also a time saver.
That's right.
So let's go ahead and talk some about just, those were individual reports we talked about. Let's talk about our multi-person reports, our team reports, and our work pair reports.
Yeah, same thing applies here. We can tailor these to our clients' needs. And by the way the process works, once the individuals complete that questionnaire one time, not only can you tailor and reorder those results all unlimited time, but you can also do the team assessments and pair assessments without having to ask the person to complete the questionnaire again. And also, you don't have to pay for these. So let's say we have a team that is kind of working in group, or intact team, I should say. We may want to provide them a team assessment. However, now if we have a group of salespeople, now we need to tailor the report for the sales team. Information is going to be different there. Now we're going to be focusing more on sales behaviors, so the sales manager can be more effective in their day-to-day managerial duties. And also, of course, we have those pair reports that you mentioned, where we take the results of two individuals and combine them into one report. And I see our clients use this, for example, when they're onboarding new employees. We take the manager's information and the new employee's information, and now the manager and new employee can have a very open discussion about how they might be different, how they might be similar, and they can proactively look into the future and think about what might be some of the things that could create some challenges. And it also provides a very kind of a trust, it creates a lot of trust when the manager shares their information with the new employee. And now the new employee, you think about how often you start a new job. It takes a while to really understand your manager. This speeds up that process tremendously, and it creates a much more open and trusting relationship between employees.
And I know this next report is someone, from clients' suggestions. So clients help us develop new reports as well every day.
Couples assessment, that has become very popular. People, of course, want to develop their personal relationships as well. And now we have tailored report that is really focused on not work situation, but more on a personal, social situation as well. Conflict resolution assessment, I believe this came recently from a client requested in it.
It was, yeah.
And what this tool helps is in situations where people may have some conflict already, and our clients want to provide third-party independent information to help the two individuals to maybe work through some of their differences and maybe have a better understanding why we're having these issues. it's not because you are a jerk. It's because you are different. And now we can begin to appreciate those differences and think about how we can actually work more effectively together using each other's different strengths to make sure that we are really more productive.
Okay, so just help me summarize, Marco. Hopefully you guys took away from this is there are many different types of reports available. You can further customize. We are constantly developing new reports, but key is one questionnaire. You're only paying for the one-time questionnaire, and you get access to all these reports if you want them.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about validity, because I know that's one of the things that sets us apart from other DISC tools.
Yeah, the validity is really important because when we provide somebody information that typically they're going to make some important decision based on that, how to modify behavior. Some people even think about, what do I want to do with my career? Now that I understand better who I am, what kind of work environments, what kind of organizations might be best suited for me? Well, those are important decisions, and we really need to make sure that we can trust the results. And with many assessment tools, unfortunately, when people even just randomly or even blindly select responses, you still get an assessment report. And if you stop and really think about that, you realize that the validity just cannot be there. And what we have in extended DISC is what I call internal validity checks. When we know that the person, for whatever reason, is not answering in a way that we can statistically and validly provide their DISC style, we do not provide a report. I think it's our ethical responsibility not to provide information if we know that we can't really trust it. So we get these, some of our clients who are maybe on the online right now, we get these invalid results messages. It simply means that nothing is wrong, but we just do not know with enough statistical validity that this report is valid.
Yeah, and what I always say is that, sometimes we think of an invalid as a kind of a weakness of a DISC tool, but to me, it's actually a strength. It's as Marco says, it's giving you only results that you can trust.
Yeah, if I'm going to a doctor, I certainly want to make sure that that doctor feels confident with the information he or she is using to diagnose what is wrong and what kind of treatment to provide.
Yeah, you don't want a cloudy or somebody else's X-ray for that matter.
That's right.
So I won't go into it, but just know not only will you be able to receive those invalid results, but there's a way to actually look at profiles to get insight into like how whether the validity of the results could be lower. So there's many more aspects to it than what we're talking about today. But
let me add, we validate the tool internationally every few years. So you just cannot do one validity study for the entire world. You need to do the validity study for different languages and different parts of the world. And we revalidate every few years and continue to publish the most up-to-date validity studies.
Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about our admin site. So just know that you as a extended DISC client has access to your admin site. There's no additional fees. You can manage not just your DISC reports, but you can also manage your DISC data directly online. So you can, of course, reorder different types of reports, individual, pair, teams, but you can also view the results online as well. So maybe you don't want to run a team report. Maybe you just want to run a quick, name map of all your participants in a group. Or you can also do it from an organizational analysis or, from a developmental standpoint where as leaders, we can decide, looking at our organization, why is this one department having so much turnover? You can go into your DISC admin site and just pull out all the people that have left your organization and look, is there any type of pattern? Are there certain DISC styles that tend to leave more than others?
Yeah, and what our clients tell us that they really like is that they can, like you said, do it online. You don't have to print the reports. You can do all kind of what-if scenarios. For example, I talked to a client, I think it was on Thursday last week, that they were putting a project team together, and they wanted to kind of figure out, what kind of individuals we should bring in the team based on their goals and their timetable for that project. So they were doing this kind of analysis to really help them decide who should be part of that team.
So yes, real-time analysis without having to generate or, go through the reports if you so choose. And again, there's no additional fee. It is part of the service that Extended DIS offers. So one of the things I know that you pride yourself on, Marku, is our support services.
Yeah, this is really, since we started the company here in North America. Actually, I come from a banking industry where customer service was something that we really took a strong pride in the organization I worked for. And I quickly wanted to implement a similar kind of value system in our organization, that we provide the best support in the assessment industry. That's always been my goal. And not only on the technical support, how do I do that kind of analysis we just talked about, but probably more important to make sure that we support our clients who are typically facilitators. Mm-hmm. So we have coaches on staff like you, Christina. You spend all of your day helping our clients to answer different questions. And I wanted to make sure that that support is very responsive. You know this much better than I do. You get those questions sometimes 2 hours before the session. Hey, can you help me with some ideas? What kind of exercises I should do? And I wanted to make sure that our clients felt very confident and comfortable using the tools. So we provide that kind of in-person support. Of course, we have the online support as well. We have the Client Resource Center where clients can log in and get PowerPoints, exercises, handouts at no additional cost. So it makes their work a lot easier. And then we have those support materials, not only for the participants, workbooks, etc., but a lot of support materials for facilitators, facilitator guides, coaches playbooks, a lot of exercises. So their work is easier when it comes to using Extended DISC.
Okay. And I just want to say, personally, I think we have the best support services in the industry. I'm going to put it out there. So, Marku, can we talk a little bit about the pricing options?
Yeah, I think it's one thing that often people find different from Extended DISC. We certainly have more traditional, you pay per assessment cost. Now, I would say, again, you only pay per person. Again, you get multiple reports at no additional cost, but you basically pay per person. But one thing that often saves our clients a lot of money is what we call an unlimited use license. And essentially, it is the organization pays a fixed fee, and they can have an unlimited use access to the assessments, use as many as you like. So it makes it very easy for them to not only to save money, but know ahead of time how much they will spend money on the assessments. And of course, we tailor those to our clients. Organization with 1,000 employees certainly would pay less than, let's say, organization of 10,000. So if you want to learn more about that, you just contact us and see how much money you could save.
And the next thing last thing I want to talk about is, while we don't require it as a trainer, I'm going to say we highly recommend it. But can you talk about certification?
Well, the bottom line is that we have several different options, be the virtual, which is very popular. If you don't want to get in the plane and travel somewhere, you can do it virtually. You're still live with one of our coaches, but you can come to a site where public session, as we call it, when people from different organizations come face-to-face training, or we can send one of our trainers to you. So there's a lot of options, and all of those provide those important recertification credits that are very important to a lot of professionals.
Okay, well, those are all our topics. I'm sure there's many more that we pride ourselves in Extended DISC. Thank you guys all for joining us. You can find out more by going to our public website, www.extendeddisc.org, or you can email us, or you can give us a call. I just do want to mention we do have another webinar coming up pretty quickly. You are first to know. It's Thursday, sorry. So it's we're usually on Wednesday, but this one will be coming up on Thursday. It's February 15th. It is 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. And the topic is yet another very popular question. It's how to promote or sell Extended DISC.
Yeah, this is going to be a good webinar because a lot of clients do ask that now that I have Extended DISC in my toolbox, maybe it's got certified, how do I, if I'm an independent consultant or have a training company, how do I sell the assessments to clients? But probably more frequently, we get that question that I'm an internal facilitator. I want to promote this within my organization. How do I best do that? So I'm going to share some ideas and best practices how to accomplish that.
Excellent. So thank you guys again for joining us. If you have any questions, put them in the question box. We will follow up today. And otherwise, have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Marku.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody.